Okay, so Coolnomics in real time. Billie Eilish. I think we all saw this week. Billie Eilish was congratulated, awarded, and celebrated for donating $11 million from her own tour to charity. And when she was accepting the recognition for her own donation to charity from her own Coolnomics, Billie Eilish is an example of Coolnomics. She is producing music and shows and the whole brand world around Billie Eilish that is relevant, emotionally potent, credible to the source from which it came, commercially viable, very scalable, from merch to live shows to streaming to documentaries to a whole beautiful product suite that we'll talk about next week, how to scale things, how to make money in the best way from your ideas, and also uh, representing sustainable human behavior values, goodness, kindness, equality, inclusion. So when Billie Eilish was being recognized this week for her donation to charity, she took a moment, and it's been memeified all over the internet, where she called out the billionaires in the room. Is this the end of the billionaire era? Not today, not tomorrow, but is that the horizon that we're heading towards? We've come from the 80s. I'm 42. I was born in 1983. I came up through the era of excess. It was about more. In my MBA, it was about growth. Growth in all ways, always is a catch cry of, I think, of Ryan Serhant, the real estate agent from Million Dollar Listing from New York City. But I think we're all seeing a shift now when we have increased austerity and a crushing of the, I mean, anyone below the 1% would be a way that you might say it, is being somewhat crushed by the trappings of capitalism. And therefore, we have increased austerity, less money in the market to spend, less discretionary spend. People's wallets are tighter, cost of living crisis, skyrocketing house prices. Millennials can't get, and Gen Zs can't get a mortgage. Wealth inequality is more of a strong thread in the zeitgeist than ever before, because it's practically, and it's a utility in front of us. It must be confronted. And it raises questions of the ethics around one human being having such vast wealth. And Billie Eilish called out, and it was memeified. What was it exactly that she said? If you're a billionaire, why are you a billionaire? In this very particular, incredulous kind of tone. Why? And then the next part was no hate. Yeah, this very colloquial Gen Z kind of lingo or vernacular. No hate, but give it away, give away your money, shorties, of course. And I think this very I think the colloquial language that Billie Eilish used is very indicative of the nature of where this topic is now shifting into the zeitgeist. We're talking about it with lingo, with slang, with Gen Z vernacular and this incredulous tone of, why are you a billionaire? Why should anyone be a billionaire? What are the ethics of one person or one group of people having so much power and so much money when you swing to the other end of the spectrum of, the full layer of humanity, the full stack of humanity, and people are struggling to eat, people are struggling to pay rent, people are, we have the US government in shutdown with food stamps being cut off at the moment. The pendulum is swinging, and major questions are being asked now that were not asked in the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s, or even the 2010s. But this year, we're seeing this swing of, will anyone be a billionaire in the future? And of course, that raises questions structurally of what would need to change for that to not be the case. There would have to be wealth caps. There would have to be a more ethical approach to how capitalism it works and how wealth is deployed. As we know, all these sort of questions are part of the zeitgeist, and thus the cultural signal this week of, is it the end of the billionaire era? We shall see. But there's certainly a shift in the economic zeitgeist. Okay, next one. I'm sure you all saw this one. Let me just check my chat, excuse me, in case there's anything I need to know about. No, all good. Okay. The poor boyfriends. I mean, it's a shift in the patriarchal dominance. This idea, as a young woman, you're raised to think that you must have a boyfriend, you must have a husband, you must be chosen to be safe, to have a place in society. You must have yes, the dominant narrative is male partner, a partner that chooses you. And we had this article in UK Vogue that was published this week, and it went viral across every single channel because it hit the zeitgeist. It's an example of a cultural pulse where multiple factors came together. There was a rumbling under the surface. This particular headline at this particular time: is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? Triggered so many responses from around the world. And we're not saying that having a boyfriend is embarrassing. I think anyone knows that that's not what the thesis is. I think the set of questions that are being raised are, what is the value of a partner in your life? And that, patriarchy, we live in a patriarchal society. We cannot deny that. This idea that, perhaps men are given a place in society much more naturally than women. Women have to earn a certain place. It's patriarchy. It's built for the male species more predominantly than women. Women have had to fight for their place in different ways. And so this shift, and this is a motive. This was such a good example for this week because this is a motive. This is shame in a headline. This is triggering. That's why it was viral, because it hit a moment in the zeitgeist. It hit the right feeling, the nerve. And this idea of being embarrassed by something, yes, Dan Brophy, absolutely. Lily Allen with David Harbour and cheating and open marriages and deception. I really like, what I like about this is the ethical questions it's asking of being a good partner, of having integrity, of truly caring for your partner, of being an equal partner. The people we've got on the chat that I can see tonight are all great people who've got good values, good integrity, who know this sort of thing, but this is not the broad nature of our society. It's not the broad nature of the patriarchal society. The assumption is that the man will always be necessary and needed within the structure of a society based on history, but we're seeing a shift. We're seeing a matriarchal or a feminine push come through in the zeitgeist, and we have the result of headlines like this. And then, yes, Dan, even having that famous example of Lily Allen aligning with that. That is, right, we're seeing this. This is Coolnomics in action. Sorry, it's not Coolnomics because it's not the nomics necessarily, but we could certainly see how this might filter down into the nomics of it. But it's certainly the cool side of it, the relevance, the zeitgeist, and the emotional potency of this right now. This is what we're going to talk about. This is something that we're looking at and could fundamentally change over the next few years. Okay, next, emotions selling. So when I was working on this lecture this week about emotional potency or emotional intelligence, I came across this particular campaign by Ikea, one of our favorites. They're certainly an example of Coolnomics, knowing how to work with the zeitgeist and have an incredibly scaled commercial model. This particular campaign by Ikea is engaging with the emotions and the senses very immediately, connecting the product itself. So I'm not sure if you can see it, it's a little bit small there, but the actual product names are right on these images. So double bed with two people kissing. What's the one with the crying? I can't read it from here. I can't remember. I think maybe a mirror, or maybe it's a set of tissues. It's $29. With a single tear, and the suppleness of that skin. The way this was shot was so important. It had to be shot. The photographic or the editorial, the image guidelines had to be intimate and immediate. You had to be able to feel and smell and touch and taste that skin and that tear. And then also even an ultrasound, which again, if you're following the logic of this, you would imagine that that's something to do with having children. I can't see it from here. Two little babies in a womb with a product attached to it. You could certainly say that's on the nose to be attaching a product to a child in embryo, but this is the world that we live in. It's visceral and it's emotive, and it's relevant to the world that the world is at. I also believe in the sense that we need to be remembering poetry. We're surrounded by data, technology, AI, the economy. Where did the art go? Where did the poetry go? Where did the feelings go? Where did the chance to breathe and be and touch and feel go? We need to remember to make space for feelings and poetry, because these are human fundamentals: to feel desire, intimacy, fear, beauty, love. This was very powerful.